She was 7 months pregnant when it happened, standing in her husband's office, flowers in her hand, a surprise for their anniversary. But the surprise was on her. His mistress was sitting on his desk, and when Caroline asked her husband to make the woman leave, he said nothing, did nothing, just watched. Then the mistress walked up to her, looked her dead in the eyes, and spit directly in her face. Her husband laughed. He actually laughed. What Caroline did not know was that her billionaire father had been secretly watching her husband for 6 months, gathering evidence, building a case, waiting for the right moment to strike. And that moment had just arrived. What happens next will shock you. Betrayal you never saw coming, secrets that will make your blood boil, and a revenge so devastating it destroyed a man who thought he was untouchable. This is the story of how one woman lost everything and how her father made sure the man responsible lost even more. Stay with me until the end. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens at minute 75. The spit landed on her cheek, warm, deliberate, and her husband laughed. Caroline Webb Holbrook would remember that sound for the rest of her life. Not the wet heat sliding down her face, not the sharp perfume of the woman who had done it, not even the shock that paralyzed every muscle in her body, but the laugh, Grant's laugh, the same laugh she had fallen in love with 7 years ago, the same laugh that had echoed through their wedding reception, the same laugh that used to make her heart flutter with joy. Now it was aimed at her like a weapon, and it cut deeper than any knife ever could. But let me start from the beginning, from before everything shattered. From the morning when Caroline Webb Holbrook still believed in her marriage, her husband, and the life they had built together. The alarm clock read 6:45 when Caroline opened her eyes. Autumn sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, painting golden stripes across the bedroom ceiling. She lay still for a moment, her hand resting on her swollen belly, feeling the familiar warmth of life growing inside her. 7 months pregnant, 30 weeks. Her daughter was the size of a cabbage now, according to the pregnancy app she checked religiously every morning. The baby kicked twice, strong and insistent, as if to say, "Good morning, Mama. I am here. I am real." Caroline smiled at the ceiling. Today was special. October 15th, their 4th wedding anniversary. 4 years since she had walked down the aisle in her grandmother's lace veil. 4 years since Grant had cried actual tears as he lifted that veil and saw her face. 4 years of building a life together. And now, in just 2 months, their family would be complete. She turned to look at the other side of the bed. Empty. The sheets were cold. Grant had left early again. He had been leaving early a lot lately. Big merger coming through, he always said. Critical negotiations. You understand, do you not, sweetheart? She understood. She always understood. That was what good wives did. Caroline showered slowly, letting the warm water ease the ache in her lower back. Pregnancy had not been kind to her body. She had gained 42 pounds. Her ankles swelled by noon every day. Her face looked puffy in photographs. But Grant said she was glowing. Grant said pregnant women were beautiful. Grant said he loved her more now than ever. Grant said a lot of things. She chose her outfit carefully. The blue wrap dress that still fit over her belly. The one Grant had complimented 6 months ago at his company's spring gala. "You look like the ocean," he had said, his hand on the small of her back, beautiful and deep and full of mysteries. She had held on to those words, replayed them on difficult days, clung to them when he came home late, smelling like perfume that was not hers. Not that she suspected anything. Of course not. Grant traveled for business. He met with clients, female clients. That was normal. That was fine. She was not the jealous type. She was not paranoid. She was not crazy. She was just pregnant and hormonal and maybe a little bit insecure. The drive to Grant's office took 45 minutes through morning traffic. Caroline hummed along to the radio, tapping her fingers on the steering wheel. Old love songs from their wedding playlist. The Righteous Brothers, Etta James, Frank Sinatra. Music from a more romantic era, Grant always said. Music that means something. The flowers sat in the passenger seat, carefully buckled in like a precious cargo. White roses, 24 of them. Grant's favorite. She had called the florist 3 days ago to make sure they would be perfect. Long stems, no brown edges, wrapped in cream silk ribbon. She had also made reservations at Maison Laurent, the French restaurant where they had their first date, where Grant had ordered for her in flawless French, and she had fallen a little bit in love with his sophistication. Table 7, their table, the one by the window overlooking the garden. It was going to be perfect. The flowers, the lunch, the announcement she had been saving for this exact moment. She was having a girl. She had found out at yesterday's ultrasound, had kept it secret for 24 hours, which felt like 24 years. Grant wanted a boy, she knew. He had talked about teaching his son to play baseball, about father-son fishing trips, about carrying on the Holbrook name. But Carolyn had seen his face light up whenever he talked about his niece, had watched him melt when babies smiled at him in restaurants. She knew deep in her heart that he would love a daughter just as much, maybe more. Everything was going to be perfect. The lobby of Holbrook Industries gleamed with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. A massive chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling, casting prismatic light across the reception desk. The building was a monument to Grant's success. 10 floors of offices, conference rooms, and corner suites. 300 employees who called him boss. A company he had built from the ground up. Well, built with a little help from her father's initial investment. But that was just seed money. Grant always said the real growth came from his vision, his leadership, his relentless drive to succeed. Carolyn signed in at the security desk. The guard smiled at her belly. "Not long now, Mrs. Holbrook," he said. His name tag read Marcus. He had worked here since before their wedding, had attended the reception with his wife, had sent them a lovely crystal vase as a gift. "2 more months," Carolyn replied, one hand on her stomach. "I can barely wait. Boy or girl?" "That is actually a surprise for my husband. Our anniversary today." Marcus's smile flickered, just for a moment. So brief, she almost missed it. "How lovely," and he said, but something in his voice had changed, something she could not quite name. She dismissed it. Pregnancy brain, reading into things that were not there. The elevator rose smoothly to the 23rd floor. Executive level, Grant's domain. She had been here 100 times over the years. Lunch deliveries when he forgot to eat. Late-night coffee runs during crunch time. Proud appearances at holiday parties where everyone told her how lucky Grant was to have such a supportive wife. The doors opened with a soft chime. The reception area was elegant and understated. Cream walls, modern art, a massive mahogany desk where Grant's executive assistant usually sat, but the desk was empty. Strange. Patricia was always at her desk, had been for 8 years. Grant called her his right hand. Carolyn walked past the empty station. Her heels clicked against the polished hardwood floor. The sound echoed in the unusual silence. Where was everyone? The floor seemed deserted. Then she heard it. Laughter, coming from Grant's corner office. His laugh, rich and warm and familiar. And another laugh, higher, sharper, musical in a practiced way. A woman's laugh. Carolyn's steps slowed. Her heart began to beat faster. There was nothing wrong, she told herself. Grant had meetings all the time. With women. That was normal. That was business. But something felt wrong. Something in the air. Something in the quality of that laughter. Too intimate. Too comfortable. Too much like the way he used to laugh with her. She reached the frosted glass door of his office. The name Grant Holbrook glinted in gold letters. Through the frosted glass, she could see shapes. Movement. 2 figures. Close together. Too close. Her hand trembled as she reached for the handle. Do not be paranoid, she told herself. Do not be that wife. The jealous one, the crazy one, the one who sees betrayal in every shadow. She pushed open the door. The scene froze like a photograph, like one of those moments that sears itself into your memory forever. Every detail perfectly preserved. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The smell of expensive cologne and even more expensive perfume. The half-empty glasses of whiskey on the mahogany desk. And Grant, her husband, the father of her unborn child, sitting in his leather executive chair with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. A woman sat on the edge of his desk. Her legs were crossed, displaying several inches of tan thigh beneath a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. Her hand rested on Grant's chest. Casual, possessive, familiar. Caroline knew her, Brittany Mercer, Grant's college girlfriend, the one whose picture had fallen out of his yearbook when Caroline was helping him move into their first apartment, the one he said meant nothing. Ancient history, he had promised. We were kids, it was never serious. Brittany had not aged a day since that yearbook photo. If anything, she had improved. Blonde hair perfectly highlighted, full lips that probably owed something to a skilled dermatologist, a body that showed no signs of ever having carried a child. The flowers slipped from Caroline's fingers. They hit the floor with a soft thud, white petals scattered across the dark carpet like snow, like tears, like the pieces of her heart beginning to crack. Grant did not stand. He did not reach for her. He did not even look guilty. He looked annoyed, inconvenienced, like she had interrupted something important. Caroline, he said. His voice was flat, cold, a voice she barely recognized. You should have called first. Those words, so casual, so cruel, as if she were a stranger, as if she were not his wife of 4 years, standing there 7 months pregnant with his child. Brittany slid off the desk. She did not leave, did not look embarrassed, did not apologize. Instead, she smiled, a smile that cut like broken glass. Oh, look, Brittany said. Her voice dripped with false sweetness. The broodmare is here. Broodmare. The word hit Caroline like a physical blow. She was not a wife to them, not a person, just a vessel, just a means to an end. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, protective, desperate. Her baby kicked hard, as if she could sense danger, as if she knew that the world she was about to be born into had just become much more dangerous. Grant, Caroline's voice came out smaller than she intended, weaker, the voice of a woman who had already been defeated without knowing it. What is this? It was not a question. She knew what it was. She had known for months, probably. Had known and refused to know. Had seen the signs and convinced herself they meant nothing. The late nights, the business trips, the way he flinched when she touched him unexpectedly, the perfume on his collar that was not hers, the credit card charges she was not supposed to see. She had known. She just had not wanted to believe. Grant leaned back in his chair. He looked at Brittany, then at Caroline, then at the ceiling, like this was all very tedious, like her pain was boring him. This is not what it looks like, he said. The oldest lie in the world. The words every cheating husband has spoken since the beginning of time. She had heard them in movies, read them in books, had always wondered what kind of fool would believe them. Now she knew. The kind of fool who was desperate, who had built her entire life around a man, who had nothing if this marriage was a lie. Brittany laughed, that high, sharp sound that would haunt Caroline's nightmares for years. She walked toward Caroline, slowly, deliberately, each step calculated, each movement designed to intimidate. She stopped inches from Caroline's pregnant belly, close enough that Caroline could smell her perfume. Expensive, cloying, like flowers rotting in an overheated room. You really thought you could keep him, Brittany said. With that, she gestured at Caroline's stomach. Her lip curled with disgust. A baby. How pathetically desperate. Did you think getting knocked up would make him love you? The cruelty was breathtaking. The casualness of it. Like destroying someone's world was just a normal Tuesday afternoon activity. Grant, Caroline said. Her voice was steadier now, colder. Tell her to leave. She waited, watched her husband's face, waited for him to stand up. To defend her, to remember the vows he had made 4 years ago, to honor and protect, to love and cherish, for better or for worse. The silence stretched. 1 second, 2, 3. The clock on the wall ticked, ticked, ticked. Grant said nothing. He just sat there in his expensive chair, in his expensive suit, in his expensive office, and did absolutely nothing while his mistress tormented his pregnant wife. That silence told Caroline everything she needed to know. Brittany tilted her head. She examined Caroline like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. Then she did something that Caroline would replay in her nightmares for years to come. She gathered the saliva in her mouth, slowly, deliberately, making sure Caroline could see exactly what she was doing. making sure the anticipation was part of the torture. Then she leaned forward, and she spit directly in Caroline's face. The warmth hit her cheek first, then the wetness, then the shock. The utter disbelief that this was actually happening, that another human being had actually done this to her, that her husband was watching it happen and doing nothing. Caroline stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to process what had just occurred. Her hand rose halfway to her face but stopped there, suspended, paralyzed. Wipe it off or acknowledge it happened. Both felt impossible, so she just stood there, the spit sliding slowly down her cheek. Her husband's mistress smiling at her like she had just won something precious. Her husband sitting in his chair, watching the whole scene with an expression of mild amusement. And then Grant laughed. Not a shocked laugh, not an uncomfortable laugh, not even a nervous laugh. A genuine laugh, deep and rich and real. Like Brittany had just told the funniest joke he had ever heard. He laughed at his pregnant wife, standing there with spit on her face. And something inside Caroline Webb Holbrook broke. She did not cry, did not scream, did not attack. She just turned and walked out of that office, past the empty reception desk, into the elevator, down 23 floors, through the marble lobby, past Marcus, who would not meet her eyes, out into the parking garage. She did not remember any of it. The next thing she knew, she was sitting in her car. Engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white. The parking garage was cool and dim. It smelled like concrete and exhaust and despair. She sat there for 7 minutes. She counted them, counted her breaths, counted the ceiling tiles, counted the parking spots she could see from her windshield. 12, 18, 12, 18. The numbers meant nothing, but counting them gave her something to hold on to. Something to keep her from screaming. Her baby kicked. Once, twice, 3 times. I am here, Mama. I am real. Whatever else is a lie, I am true. Carolyn finally started the car. Her hands were still shaking. The spit had dried on her cheek. She could still feel it. Would feel it for days, weeks, months. A phantom sensation of humiliation that would not wash away no matter how many times she scrubbed her skin. She did not drive home. She could not face that house. The house Grant's money had bought. The house where their wedding photos hung on every wall. The house where she had believed she was building a future. Instead, she drove to the only place that felt safe. Meredith's apartment. Meredith Cole lived in a converted warehouse in the Arts District. Exposed brick walls. Industrial windows. A fire escape that overlooked a community garden 4 stories below. It was the kind of apartment Caroline used to dream about before she married Grant and moved into a house with 6 bedrooms and a 3-car garage. She did not call ahead, just drove there on autopilot, parked in the loading zone, took the freight elevator to the 4th floor, knocked on the door with a hand that would not stop trembling. Meredith answered in yoga pants and an oversized sweater. Her dark hair was piled in a messy bun. A coffee cup steamed in her hand. She took one look at Caroline's face, at the mascara tracks, at the damp spot on her cheek that had not quite dried, and her expression shifted from surprise to horror to something that looked almost like recognition. She said nothing, just set down the coffee, opened her arms, and Caroline fell into them. She cried for 23 minutes straight, great heaving sobs that racked her entire body. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen, and her baby was kicking in protest at all the upheaval. Meredith held her through all of it, did not ask questions, did not offer platitudes, just held her and stroked her hair and made soft, shushing sounds like a mother comforting a child. Finally, the tears stopped. Not because Caroline felt better, because she had simply run dry. Meredith led her to the overstuffed couch, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders despite the warmth of the afternoon, made tea that Caroline would not drink, but holding the mug gave her hands something to do. "Tell me," Meredith said. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Tell me everything." So Carolyn did. She told her about the office, about Brittany, about the spit, about Grant's laugh. She told her about the way he had looked at her, like she was nothing, like she was less than nothing, like 4 years of marriage and a baby on the way meant absolutely nothing to him. When she finished, the tea in her hands had gone cold. The afternoon sun had shifted, painting different shadows on the brick walls. The world outside kept moving, indifferent to the fact that her entire life had just imploded. Meredith sat across from her. Her face was carefully neutral, too neutral, like she was working hard to control her expression, like she was hiding something behind that calm facade. "Say something," Carolyn whispered. "I am going to kill him, Mayor. I am serious, Caro. I am going to drive to that office, and I am going to wrap my hands around his throat, and I am going to squeeze until his eyes pop out of his stupid, handsome face. That would land you in prison." "Worth it." The joke fell flat. Both women knew it. Carolyn stared at the cold tea. Her reflection rippled on the surface. She looked like a ghost, pale and hollow and haunted. "He laughed," she said. The words caught in her throat. He watched her do it, and he laughed. Like it was funny. Like I was funny. Like our whole marriage was just one big joke that I was too stupid to understand. "You are not stupid." "I feel stupid. I feel like the biggest fool who ever lived." Carolyn set down the mug, pressed her palms against her eyes. "How did I not see it? How did I not know?" "Because you loved him. Because you trusted him. Because that is what you are supposed to do with your husband. I should have known. The signs were all there, the late nights, the phone calls he took in other rooms, the way he looked at me sometimes like he was bored, like I was disappointing him just by existing." "Caro, stop." The perfume on his shirts. I told myself it was from clients, from business lunches. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was letting pregnancy hormones make me crazy. She laughed, a broken sound. "Maybe I am crazy. Maybe this is all some hormonal delusion, and tomorrow I will wake up and everything will be fine." Meredith moved to sit beside her, took her hands, squeezed them hard. "Look at me," she said. "Look at me, Carolyn." Carolyn looked. "You are not crazy. You are not delusional. What happened today was real. What he did was real, and none of it was your fault." "But I should have." "No, stop. There is no should have. There is no could have. There is only what he did. He betrayed you. He humiliated you. He let another woman assault you while you are carrying his child. That is on him. All of it. None of it is your fault." The words sank in slowly, like water seeping into parched earth. Carolyn wanted to believe them, desperately wanted to believe that she was not the villain of this story. "Meredith," she said slowly, "you did not seem surprised." A flicker of something crossed Meredith's face. Guilt, fear, resignation. "What do you mean?" "When I told you about about the affair, you did not seem surprised. You seemed like you already knew." The silence stretched 5 seconds, 10, 15. What are you not telling me?" Meredith closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet. "I should have told you years ago," she said. "I wanted to. God, I wanted to so many times. But you were so happy, or I thought you were happy, and I did not want to be the one to destroy that." Carolyn's stomach dropped. "Tell me what?" "Brittany, she is not new. This did not just start." Meredith's voice cracked. "I saw them together 2 years ago at that marketing conference in Chicago, the one Grant said was strictly business. 2 years. The words echoed in Caroline's head. 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. 2 years ago, she had been planning their second anniversary trip to Italy, picking out the perfect hotel in Florence, learning basic Italian phrases so she could order dinner without embarrassing herself. 2 years ago, she had been decorating the nursery for the first time, the pregnancy that did not stick, the baby she had lost at 11 weeks, the devastation that had nearly broken her. 2 years ago, Grant had held her while she cried over that lost pregnancy, had promised they would try again, had sworn that nothing would ever come between them. 2 years ago, he had been sleeping with Brittany Mercer. "You saw them," Carolyn said. Her voice sounded far away, like someone else was speaking through her mouth. "In Chicago. At the hotel bar. I was there for a work thing, a totally random coincidence. I walked in and there they were, his hand on her thigh, her head on his shoulder, the way they looked at each other." Meredith wiped her eyes. "I knew, Caro. I knew right then what was happening." And you did not tell me. I wanted to. I picked up the phone 100 times, but Grant, he found out I had seen them. He came to my apartment the next day, said I had misunderstood, said Brittany was an old friend who was going through a hard time, said she needed comfort and he was just being supportive. And you believed him? No, but then he said something else. Meredith's face twisted with pain. He said you were fragile, that you were still recovering from the miscarriage. That news like this could push you over the edge. He said he was worried about your mental health, that you were already imagining things, seeing problems that were not there. He made me feel like telling you would hurt you more than staying silent. Gaslighting. The words surfaced in Carolyn's mind like a creature emerging from dark water. She had read about it, had watched documentaries about manipulative relationships, had always thought she was too smart to fall for something like that. But Grant had not just been gaslighting her. He had been gaslighting everyone around her too, creating a narrative where she was unstable, where her perceptions could not be trusted, where anyone who tried to warn her would seem like they were causing harm rather than preventing it. He made you doubt what you saw, Carolyn said slowly. He made you think protecting me meant keeping me ignorant. I am so sorry, Carol. I should have told you anyway. I should have trusted you to handle the truth. I should have... Stop, Carolyn held up her hand. I am not angry at you. You should be. Maybe, but not right now. Right now I am saving all my anger for him. Her phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then again. She looked at the screen. 3 texts from Grant. The first one read, "You overreacted." The second, it was a joke. "Brittany has a dark sense of humor. You know how she is." The third, "Come home. You are being dramatic. You are going to stress the baby." Carolyn read the messages twice, then a third time. Each word was a tiny knife. Each sentence was gaslighting wrapped in fake concern. You overreacted, as if having spit on your face was something a reasonable person would shrug off. It was a joke, as if assault became acceptable when you called it comedy. You are being dramatic, the familiar refrain, the constant undermining. The endless suggestion that her emotions were the problem, not his behavior. You are going to stress the baby, using her daughter as a weapon, making her pregnancy a tool for manipulation. What does he say? Meredith asked. Carolyn handed her the phone, watched her friend's face cycle through disbelief, rage, and finally a cold, hard anger. The audacity, Meredith breathed. The absolute audacity. He thinks I will come home. He thinks I will apologize for making a scene. He thinks this will all blow over by dinner time. Will it? Carolyn thought about the house waiting for her, the king-size bed she shared with a stranger, the nursery she had decorated with such hope, the wedding photos she would have to look at every single day. I do not know, she admitted. I do not know what to do. I do not know where to go. Everything I have is tied up with him. The house is in both our names. The bank accounts are joint. My whole life is built around being Grant Holbrook's wife. Then we start building a new life. With what? I have not worked since we got married. He said he wanted me to focus on making a home, on being ready to raise a family. I gave up my career for him. I gave up everything for him. The reality of her situation crashed over her like a wave. She was 7 months pregnant, unemployed, dependent on a man who had just laughed while another woman spit in her face. What was she supposed to do? Where was she supposed to go? How was she supposed to provide for a baby when she had spent 4 years making herself small enough to fit inside Grant Holbrook's life? Call your father, Meredith said quietly. Caroline flinched. I cannot. Why not? Because She trailed it off, tried to find the words. I have not told him anything about the problems, about the fights, about any of it. Every Sunday when he calls, I tell him everything is perfect. I have been lying to my parents for months. They would want to know. I know, but I was so ashamed. Am so ashamed. They warned me about Grant, before the wedding. My father said something felt off. He said Grant was too charming, too perfect, too eager to impress. I told him he was being overprotective. I told him I knew what I was doing. Carolyn laughed bitterly. I accused my father of not trusting my judgment. And now look at me, sitting in your apartment, with another woman's spit on my face, proving that my judgment was exactly as bad as he feared. Your father loves you, Meredith said. Whatever happened before, whatever warnings you ignored, he loves you, and he would want to help you now. Carolyn knew she was right. Richard Webb was many things: intimidating, demanding, a perfectionist who expected excellence from everyone around him. But underneath all of that, he was her father, and he would burn down the world to protect his daughter. The question was whether she was ready to let him. I need to think, Carolyn said. I need time to process. I cannot make any decisions right now. Okay, that is okay. You can stay here tonight, as long as you need it then. Thank you, Mayor. Do not thank me. I should have told you years ago. I should have trusted you with the truth instead of treating you like something breakable. Meredith squeezed her hands again. I will not make that mistake again. That night, Caroline lay on Meredith's guest bed. The mattress was too soft. The pillows smelled like lavender fabric softener. Outside the industrial windows, the city hummed with life. Cars and conversations and the distant wail of a siren. She stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks, counting the shadows, counting all the ways her life had fallen apart in a single afternoon. I am not crazy, she thought. I know what I saw. I know what I felt on my face. Her baby kicked, hard and insistent. A reminder that whatever else was broken, this one thing was whole. This one thing was real. This one thing was worth fighting for. I will not let him take you, Carolyn whispered to her belly. I will not let anyone take you. And somewhere in the darkness, a plan began to form. Fragile as a newborn, but growing stronger with every breath. Morning came gray and reluctant. Rain streaked the industrial windows of Meredith's apartment. The city below was muted, wrapped in fog and the sound of tires on wet pavement. Carolyn had not slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. The spit, the laugh, the look on Grant's face. The images played on an endless loop, a horror film she could not escape. Her phone had buzzed 12 more times through the night. She had not looked at the messages, did not need to. She could imagine what they said. More blame disguised as concern, more manipulation wrapped in love language. At 6:45, the phone rang. An actual call this time. Grant's name flashed on the screen. Caroline stared at it, let it ring, once, twice, 3 times, 4, voicemail. A minute later, a text appeared. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. Come home and let us work this out like adults. As if she were the one being childish, as if she were the one who needed to grow up. Meredith appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. She looked like she had not slept much either. There were shadows under her eyes and a tension in her shoulders that Caroline recognized as protective fury. He is calling, Meredith said. It was not a question. Every hour since midnight. Are you going to answer? No. The word came out stronger than Caroline expected. Not yet, maybe not ever. Meredith handed her a cup. The coffee was strong and bitter and exactly what she needed. She wrapped her hands around it, letting the warmth seep into fingers that had been cold since yesterday afternoon. I have been thinking, Caroline said slowly, about what happens next. And I need help, real help, the kind I cannot get from friends or lawyers or therapists. She took a deep breath. I need to call my father. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, heavy with everything they implied. Richard Webb was not just any father. He was Richard Webb, founder and CEO of Webb Industries, a self-made billionaire who had started with nothing and built an empire through sheer will and relentless determination. Forbes profiled him annually. Business schools taught case studies about his strategies. Competitors spoke his name in hushed tones, usually right before they lost everything. He was also the most terrifying man Caroline had ever known. Not because he was violent or cruel, but because he was absolutely, utterly, terrifyingly competent. When Richard Webb decided something needed to happen, it happened. No exceptions, no excuses, no escape. Are you sure? Meredith asked quietly. No. Carolyn laughed, a small, broken sound. I am not sure about anything right now, but I know I cannot do this alone, and I know that my father will know what to do. She picked up her phone, Her fingers hovered over the contact labeled Dad. The same contact she had called every Sunday for 14 years. The same voice that had always meant safety and guidance in home. But this call would be different. This call would change everything. She pressed the button. The phone rang once. Richard Webb answered before the second ring. "Sweetheart?" His voice was calm as always, measured, controlled. But underneath it, something alert, attentive. "This is early for you. Is everything all right?" And just like that, with those simple words, Caroline broke. The story spilled out of her, disjointed, desperate. She told him about the office, about Brittany, about the spit, about the laugh. She told him about the 2 years of lies, about the gaslighting, about every small cruelty she had excused and every red flag she had convinced herself to ignore. She told him everything. When she finished, the line went silent. For 11 seconds, she counted them, each one an eternity. Then Richard Webb said 5 words that changed everything. "I will be there by morning." "Daddy, you do not have to." "Yes." His voice was soft, gentle. But underneath it, something harder, something cold, something that made Caroline understand, for the first time, why people feared him. "I do. I am so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have listened when you tried to warn me. I should have—" "Stop." The command was quiet but absolute. "There will be time for that later. Right now, I need you to tell me where you are. I need you to stay there, and I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Do not go back to that house. Do not take his calls. Do not communicate with him in any way until I get there. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Good, I love you, Caroline. Whatever else has happened, whatever mistakes were made, I love you, and I will fix this." The call ended. Caroline sat there for a long moment, the phone clutched in her hands, the coffee growing cold. "He is coming," she told Meredith. "I figured." He sounded different. I have never heard him like that before. Meredith was quiet for a moment. Then she said carefully, "Your father is a dangerous man, Caro. Not violent dangerous, but dangerous in other ways. The kind of dangerous that ruins people completely." "I know. Are you okay with that? With whatever he is about to do to Grant?" Caroline thought about the question. Really thought about it. She thought about the spit on her face, the laugh in her ears, the years of lies and manipulation. She thought about her daughter growing inside her, innocent and helpless, and depending on her mother to keep her safe. "Yes," she said finally, "I am okay with that." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Caroline tried to eat breakfast and managed half a piece of toast, tried to nap and lay awake staring at the ceiling, tried to read a magazine and could not focus past the first sentence. Meredith stayed close, made tea, told bad jokes, filled the silence with chatter about nothing important. It helped. A little. At 7:45 that evening, Grant showed up at Meredith's door. The pounding started without warning. 3 hard knocks that rattled the frame. Then his voice, loud and demanding, "Caroline, I know you are in there. Open this door." Caroline froze. Her heart began to race. Her baby kicked frantically, sensing her fear. Meredith was on her feet in an instant, moving toward the door, not to open it, to stand between it and Caroline. "Go away, Grant," she called through the steel. "She does not want to see you." "This is none of your business, Meredith. This is between me and my wife." "Your wife, who you let another woman assault yesterday?" "That wife?" A pause, then his voice shifting to something more reasonable. "That was a misunderstanding. Brittany and I are just friends. Caroline got the wrong idea." "She got the wrong idea about spit on her face?" "Look, I just want to talk to her. 5 minutes. That is all I am asking." Caroline found her voice, found her feet, walked toward the door, though every instinct screamed at her to hide. "Grant," she said through the steel, "leave." "Caroline, baby, please let me explain." "There is nothing to explain." "There is so much to explain. You are acting crazy right now. This is exactly what I was worried about. Your mental state has been so fragile lately, and now you are having some kind of breakdown." "I am not having a breakdown." "Then why are you hiding from your own husband? Why are you refusing to have a rational conversation? This is not normal behavior, Caroline. I am seriously concerned about your stability. The gaslighting was so blatant now, so obvious. How had she ever fallen for it? How had she ever believed that the problem was her? Go home, Grant. Not until we talk. Not until you stop acting like a child and face me like an adult. If you do not leave in the next 30 seconds, I am calling the police. For what? For a husband trying to talk to his wife? They will laugh at you. For harassment, for trespassing, for whatever else my lawyer can come up with. Another pause. Longer this time. Lawyer? Grant's voice changed again. Harder now, the mask slipping. You are already talking to lawyers? My father lands in 3 hours. He is bringing Ted Ashford with him. I imagine they will have quite a lot to discuss with you. The silence that followed was different. Caroline could almost feel the calculation happening on the other side of the door. Grant processing this new information, realizing that the game had changed. Your father, he said finally. Of course, running to daddy like a little girl who cannot handle her own problems. Goodbye, Grant. This is not over, Caroline. Not even close. You think your father's money can protect you? You have no idea what I am capable of. No idea what I will do to keep what is mine. What is mine? Not who, what? She was a possession to him. She always had been. Leave, she said, now. Footsteps, retreating, the elevator doors opening and closing. Then silence. Caroline leaned against the wall. Her legs were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. But somewhere inside her, a small flame was burning. Not quite anger, not quite hope, something in between. She had stood up to him. She had refused to open that door. She had drawn a line and held it. It was a small victory, but it was hers. Meredith appeared beside her, put an arm around her shoulders. You did good, Caro. I feel like I am going to throw up. That is normal. You just faced down a bully. That takes a lot out of you. He sounded so reasonable at first, like I was the one being difficult. That is how they work. They make you feel crazy for having normal reactions to abnormal behavior. Caroline closed her eyes, breathed deep, let the adrenaline slowly fade. My father is going to destroy him, she said quietly. Good. I mean really destroy him. Not just divorce, not just custody battles. Total destruction. Even better. Is that terrible to want that? Meredith was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you know what is terrible? What he did to you. What he has been doing to you for years. The lease, the manipulation. The way he made you doubt your own sanity. That is terrible. She squeezed Caroline's shoulders. Whatever happens to him next, that is justice. 3 hours later, Richard Webb's private jet touched down at the executive airport. He was not alone. Lorraine Webb sat beside him, silver hair perfectly coiffed, looking like a society matron going to a charity gala rather than a mother going to war. Behind them came Theodore Ashford, family attorney, carrying 3 leather briefcases full of documents. And behind Ted came a man Caroline had never seen before. Tall, broad, face like carved granite, eyes that seemed to see everything and give away nothing. The car ride to Meredith's apartment took 30 minutes. Caroline spent most of it in her mother's arms, not crying this time. She had cried herself empty, just being held, just remembering what safety felt like. Richard sat across from them, silent, watching his daughter with an expression she could not quite read. Love, certainly. But something else too, something cold and calculating. When they arrived at Meredith's building, they took over her living room like generals establishing a command post. Ted spread papers across every available surface. Lorraine made tea in the tiny kitchen. The granite-faced man, whose name turned out to be Vincent Marshall, stood by the window and watched the street below. Daddy, Caroline finally said, what is happening? Richard sat down across from her, took her hands in his. His grip was warm but firm, the same hands that had taught her to ride a bike, that had walked her down the aisle, that had always meant protection. 6 months ago, he said, I received an anonymous letter about your husband. The anonymous letter changed everything. Richard reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was plain white, standard business size, no return address. Caroline's father's name had been typed on the front in a generic font, that could have come from any computer in America. This arrived at my office in April, Richard said, delivered by courier. No tracking number, no sender information, completely untraceable. He handed it to Caroline. She opened it with trembling fingers. The letter inside was typed on plain paper. Single-spaced, no signature. Dear Mr. Webb, your daughter Caroline is married to a man who does not deserve her. Grant Holbrook has been unfaithful since the beginning of their marriage. He has stolen from her, lied to her, and is planning to take everything she has. By the time you read this, he will have been cheating on her for nearly 2 years. I know you have the resources to verify this information. I encourage you to do so before it is too late. A friend. A friend, Caroline repeated. Her voice sounded hollow, far away. Who sent this? I do not know, not yet. Richard leaned forward. When I first received it, I wanted to dismiss it. Grant was family. He was the father of my grandchild. I did not want to believe that I had been so wrong about him. But you believed it. I believed it was worth investigating, quietly, discreetly. Richard nodded toward the granite-faced man by the window. Vincent is former FBI, now head of security for my company. I asked him to look into Grant's activities, without anyone knowing. Not Grant, not you, not even your mother, until last week. Caroline looked at Vincent Marshall. He met her gaze without flinching. His eyes gave away nothing. He was the kind of man who saw everything and said nothing unless required. What did you find? She asked. Vincent stepped forward. He set a thick manila folder on the coffee table. It must have contained 200 pages of documents. The affair with Brittany Mercer began 6 weeks after your wedding, he said. His voice was flat, clinical. Just facts, stripped of emotion. They met at a hotel in Midtown Manhattan on November 2nd of that year. The same hotel where your husband supposedly had a business dinner. I have credit card receipts, security footage, and cell phone location data confirming their relationship continued from that date to the present. 6 weeks. 6 weeks after she had said I do. 6 weeks after they had danced their first dance. 6 weeks after he had carried her across the threshold and made love to her in their new home. 6 weeks. But Brittany is not the only one, Vincent continued. Over the past 3 years, Grant Holbrook has maintained relationships with at least 4 other women. Some brief, some ongoing. All of them kept completely separate from his marriage and from each other. He opened the folder, pulled out photographs, screenshots of text messages, hotel receipts, a paper trail of infidelity stretching back nearly as long as her marriage had existed. Caroline looked at the photos. Women she did not recognize, restaurants she had never been to, moments of intimacy that should have been hers. How many times had Grant kissed her goodnight and then texted another woman? How many business trips had really been romantic getaways? How many nights had she lain awake wondering why he seemed distant, while he was thinking about someone else? There is more, Richard said quietly. More? Caroline laughed. It came out wrong, broken. What else could there possibly be? Vincent pulled out another stack of documents, bank statements, financial records, numbers that blurred together on the page. Your grandmother's trust fund, he said, the one that was placed in your name on your 25th birthday. Original value, $2,400,000. I know my trust fund, Caroline said. Grant helped me set up the account. He said he wanted to make sure it was invested properly. He invested it properly, into his own pocket. Vincent pointed to a line on one of the statements. Over the past 2 years, the funds have been systematically transferred through a series of shell companies, all of which are controlled by Grant Holbrook, all of which eventually deposited into accounts only he can access. Caroline stared at the numbers, tried to make them make sense. That is impossible, I would have noticed. The account statements were fabricated. Grant had access to your email. He intercepted the real statements and replaced them with fake ones showing healthy balances. The account he showed you exists, it just does not contain your money anymore. $2.4 million, her grandmother's legacy, the money that was supposed to secure her future, her daughter's future, gone, stolen by the man she had trusted most in the world. Lorraine made a sound, half gasp, half growl. Her southern composure cracked completely. "That bastard," she hissed. "That absolute bastard." Richard held up his hand, patient, controlled, the eye of the storm. "There is one more thing," he said, "and this is the worst of it." Carolyn looked at her father. His face was calm, but his eyes were terrifying. "What?" Vincent pulled out a single document, handwritten notes on legal paper. Grant's handwriting. Caroline would know it anywhere. "6 weeks ago, your husband met with a family law attorney. He asked about procedures for establishing custody of an unborn child. Specifically, he wanted to know how to prove a mother mentally unfit to care for her own baby." The words did not compute at first. Carolyn read them again, and again, and again. "I do not understand." "He was building a case against you," Richard said gently, "documenting your supposed instability, collecting evidence of your emotional problems, the anxiety, the paranoia he invented, the breakdown he was trying to create. Why would he?" "The notes are clear. He intended to file for sole custody immediately after the birth. He planned to use everything he had manufactured against you. Every time he made you doubt yourself, every fight he provoked, every tear he caused. It was all evidence for his case." Carolyn felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. He was not testing whether the baby was his. He was planning to take her away, not because he wanted to be a father. Grant had shown no interest in fatherhood. He complained about the pregnancy constantly, about her changing body, about how tired and emotional she always was. He did not want the baby. He wanted leverage. He wanted control. He wanted to destroy her completely, to take everything she loved, to leave her with nothing. Carolyn tried to stand. The world tilted. "I need to." She barely made it to the bathroom before she was sick. Lorraine followed, held her hair back, rubbed circles on her spine, made soft sounds of comfort that could not reach the horror inside her. The tiles were cold against her knees. She counted them. 12 across, 18 down. The same numbers as the bathroom in her house. The house Grant was probably sitting in right now, planning his next move. Her baby kicked, strong and insistent. A reminder, a promise. "I will not let him take you," Carolyn whispered. "I will not let anyone take you. I will die first." The words came from somewhere deep inside her, somewhere primal, somewhere that had nothing to do with the polite, accommodating woman Grant had tried to create. She was a mother, and mothers protect their young. When she finally emerged from the bathroom, her father was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights, at the world that kept spinning despite everything. "What happens now?" Caroline asked. Richard turned. His face was still calm, but his eyes were something else entirely. Something that made her understand for the first time why people feared him. "Now," he said, "we make him pay." The next 3 days were a blur of documents, strategy sessions, in preparation for war. Ted Ashford turned Meredith's living room into a command center. Papers covered every surface. Laptops glowed on the coffee table. The coffee maker ran continuously, filling the apartment with the smell of caffeine and determination. Vincent Marshall came and went at odd hours, always with new information, new evidence, new reasons to despise the man Caroline had married. He had discovered that Grant's supposed business success was built on shaky foundations, bad investments covered up with creative accounting, investors misled about the company's true financial health, a house of cards waiting for the right wind to blow it down. But underneath all the planning, Carolyn found herself drowning in memories. She would be reviewing documents, and suddenly she would remember their first dance at the wedding, the way Grant had held her close, the tears in his eyes as they swayed to Frank Sinatra singing "The Way You Look Tonight." Had any of it been real? Had he ever actually loved her? Or had she been a mark from the beginning, a target, a means to an end? The memories came in waves, relentless, overwhelming. Their first date at Maison Laurent, Grant ordering in perfect French, the way he had looked at her across the candlelight, like she was the most precious thing in the world. Their engagement, the proposal in Paris, the Eiffel Tower glittering behind them, the ring that she had thought meant forever, the early days of marriage, the laughter, the inside jokes, the way he used to bring her coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. When did it change? When did the real Grant emerge from behind the mask? Or had the mask been there all along and she had simply refused to see it? On the second night, Carolyn sat alone in the nursery she had decorated in her mind. The nursery that existed only in her imagination now, because the real one was in the house she could not go back to. She thought about her grandmother, Eleanor Webb, the woman who had left her the trust fund that Grant had stolen. Grandma Eleanor had been a force of nature, married to Grandpa James for 52 years, raised 3 children through the Depression, started a small business that became a moderately successful chain of bakeries, never took nonsense from anyone. She had died when Caroline was 19, but her words lived on. Some people love with their whole hearts, child, Grandma Eleanor had said once, when Caroline was crying over a high school boyfriend who had cheated. And some people just pretend to. The tragedy is you cannot always tell the difference until it is too late. Too late. That was where Caroline was now. Too late to undo the marriage. Too late to unspend the trust fund. Too late to unfeel the spit on her face. But not too late to fight back. Her phone buzzed. A text from Grant. The 47th one since she had left. I know your father is here. I know you think you have the upper hand now. But you are making a terrible mistake, Caroline. A terrible mistake that you will regret for the rest of your life. Come home and we can still fix this. We can still be a family. She did not respond, did not read it twice, just deleted it and put the phone away. Richard found her in the dark apartment an hour later. She was sitting on the fire escape, watching the rain fall on the city below. You should be sleeping, he said, settling onto the metal platform beside her. I cannot. Every time I close my eyes, I see it. The spit, the laugh, everything. And that will fade with time. Will it? She looked at her father. Have you ever been betrayed like this? By someone you trusted completely? Richard was quiet for a long moment. The rain fell softly around them. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. Once, he said finally, a long time ago, before I met your mother. What happened? I was young, stupid. I trusted a business partner who turned out to be stealing from me. Not just money, clients, intellectual property, everything I had built. By the time I realized what was happening, I had almost lost everything. What did you do? Richard smiled. It was not a nice smile. I destroyed him. Completely. Utterly. Not through violence. Through something more devastating. I exposed every lie he had ever told. Every fraud he had ever committed. Every person he had ever betrayed. By the time I was done, he could not get a job as a janitor, let alone a businessman. Did it help? Did the revenge make you feel better? For a while, then it did not. He turned to look at her and his eyes were gentle now. Revenge is satisfying in the moment, but it does not heal you. It does not fix what was broken. Only time does that. Time and the people who love you. Carolyn rested her head on her father's shoulder. She had not done that since she was a little girl, since before she was too old and too proud and too busy being an adult. I am scared, Daddy. I know. Not of Grant, of myself, of who I might become if I let the anger take over. Anger is just energy. You can use it to destroy or you can use it to build. The choice is yours. What do you think I should do? Richard was quiet for a moment. I think you should let me handle the destruction and focus your energy on building a new life for yourself and for my granddaughter. The next morning, Richard called a meeting. Ted Ashford presented 3 options. Lorraine took notes. Vincent stood by the door, ready for anything. Option 1, Ted said, we pursue a quiet divorce, private negotiations, confidential settlement. Grant walks away with some money, but he loses access to Caroline and the baby. The story never goes public. No, Caroline said immediately. He does not deserve quiet. Option 2, we go public with everything, the affairs, the theft, the custody scheme. We destroy his reputation and his business in one decisive strike. He loses everything. And the third option? Richard answered before Ted could. We wait. We let him make the first move. We let him dig himself deeper into the hole he has created, and then we bury him so completely that he can never climb out. Caroline thought about it, about Grant's arrogance, his certainty that he was untouchable. his belief that money and charm could protect him from any consequence. He would make a mistake. He always did. He was too confident, too convinced of his own superiority. Option 3, she said, but with a time limit. If he has not made a move in 1 week, we go public anyway. Richard nodded. He did not look surprised. There is something else, Ted said. Something Vincent discovered this morning. All eyes turned to the former FBI agent. Grant has been in contact with a journalist, a tabloid reporter named Jessica Crane. She specializes in scandal pieces about wealthy families. Grant is planning to get ahead of any accusations by painting Caroline as mentally unstable, an unreliable narrator, a jealous wife who invented an affair to explain her own failures as a partner. The classic playbook. Destroy her credibility before she could destroy his. When? Richard asked. He is feeding her information now, building the narrative. The article could run any day. Carolyn felt a cold wave of horror wash over her. Every time she had trusted Grant with her fears, every time she had let him see her vulnerability, he had filed it all away. Ammunition for exactly this moment. The anxiety she had admitted to, the therapy she had tried, the medication she had taken after the miscarriage, the fights where she had cried and begged him to love her. All of it, weapons now, turned against her. He has been planning this for months, she realized, maybe years, building a case, documenting my weakness, making sure he had an exit strategy if things went wrong. That is what narcissists do, Vincent said. They plan for every contingency. They see relationships as games to be won, not connections to be treasured. So what do we do? Richard stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city he had conquered through sheer force of will. We do not wait for his article, he said. We beat him to the punch, but not with accusations, with evidence, irrefutable, undeniable evidence that makes anything he says look like desperate lies. The video, Ted said, from the office. Exactly. Nothing he says about Caroline being crazy will matter when the world sees what actually happened, when they see him laughing while his mistress spits on his pregnant wife. Carolyn thought about that video, about millions of people watching her lowest moment, her humiliation broadcast for entertainment. I do not know if I can handle that, she said quietly. Having everyone see it, having strangers judge me. Lorraine took her hand, squeezed it gently. You will not be alone, she said. We will be right beside you, and the people judging will not be judging you. They will be judging him. Your mother is right, Richard said. That video does not show your weakness. It shows his cruelty, his inhumanity. The world will not see a victim. They will see a survivor. Carolyn looked around the room, at her parents, at Ted, at Vincent, at Meredith, who had barely left her side for 3 days. She was not alone. She had never been alone. She had just forgotten for a while what it felt like to be supported. Okay, she said, let us do it. Grant Holbrook came home on Thursday evening to find his entire world sitting on the front lawn. 3 suitcases, 5 boxes, a pile of designer suits draped across the hedges like defeated soldiers. His golf clubs scattered across the grass, his vintage watch collection glinting in the autumn sunlight. The front door was closed. A new deadbolt gleamed on the handle. The locks had been changed while he was at work. Caroline watched from the upstairs window. She had wanted to be on the porch when he arrived, standing tall and defiant. But Richard had convinced her to stay inside, to let the adults handle the confrontation, to protect herself and the baby from any unpredictable reaction. So she watched, from a safe distance, as her husband's carefully constructed life began to crumble. Grant stood in the driveway for almost a full minute, his mouth opened and closed. His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally the first crack of panic. Then he moved, striding toward the front door with the confidence of a man who still believed he was in control. He pounded on the door. 3 hard knocks that echoed through the house. Caroline, Caroline, open this door right now. No response. This is my house. You cannot do this. This is illegal. The door swung open. Richard Webb stood in the doorway. Behind him, Lorraine Cheyenne, Ted Ashford, Vincent Marshall, a wall of people who had stopped pretending to like Grant Holbrook. Grant, Richard said pleasantly. What a surprise. Grant's confident stride faltered. Just for a moment. Then the mask snapped back into place. Richard? He tried to smile. It came out wrong, too tight, too desperate. This is unexpected. I did not realize you were in town. I imagine there are a lot of things you did not realize. Look, I do not know what Caroline has told you, but this is all a huge misunderstanding. We had a fight, couples fight. It is normal. If everyone could just calm down. Calm down. Richard's voice was mild, almost friendly. You want us to calm down. Yes, this is all being blown way out of proportion. Caroline is emotional right now. Pregnancy hormones. You know how women get. If I could just talk to her. I saw the video. Grant went very still. What video? The security camera in your office? The one you did not know about. I watched your mistress spit in my daughter's face. I watched you laugh. Would you like me to describe your expression? You looked quite entertained. The mask cracked. Real fear flickered underneath. That was taken out of context. Brittany and I were just joking around. Caroline walked in at the wrong moment. At the wrong moment. Richard took a step forward, just one step, but something about it made Grant take a step back. My daughter walked in at the wrong moment to find you with your mistress, and then stood there while that mistress assaulted her. And you laughed. It was not assault, it was just spitting on someone is assault, Grant. Battery, actually, in most jurisdictions. A misdemeanor usually, but it can be elevated to felony assault if the victim is pregnant. Richard smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Caroline had ever seen, which, of course, my daughter was. Grant's face had gone gray. The implications were beginning to dawn on him. This was not going to blow over. This was not something he could charm his way out of. What do you want? He asked. His voice had changed. Smaller now. Stripped of bravado. What I want is to watch you suffer. What I want is to destroy everything you have ever built. What I want is to make sure that every person who has ever smiled at you learns exactly what kind of creature you really are. Richard, please, we can work something out. I can explain everything. You can explain how you stole $2.4 million from my daughter's trust fund? You can explain your notes about taking her baby away? You can explain the 4 other women you have been sleeping with during your marriage? With each accusation, Grant seemed to shrink. The confident businessman was disappearing. In his place, something smaller, something uglier, something true. I do not know what you are talking about. Of course you do not. Richard turned to Vincent. Show him. Vincent stepped forward with the folder, the same folder Caroline had seen 3 days ago. He held up photographs, documents, bank statements, a complete record of Grant Holbrook's crimes. We have everything, Richard said. Every affair, every theft, every plan you made to destroy my daughter. It is all documented, verified, ready for publication. You cannot prove. We can prove all of it, and we will, unless. Grant looked up, a drowning man grasping at a lifeline. Unless what? Unless you sign the papers Mr. Ashford has prepared. Full divorce, sole custody to Caroline, return of all stolen funds. You walk away with nothing except what you brought into the marriage, which, as I recall, was not much. For a long moment, Grant said nothing. His eyes darted around, looking for an escape, an angle, a way to turn this back to his advantage. He found nothing. And if I sign, this all goes away? The video, the evidence? If you sign, I will not destroy you today. But make no mistake, Grant, the evidence does not disappear. It stays with me, a guarantee of your good behavior. If you ever come near my daughter again, if you ever try to contact my granddaughter, if you so much as breathe her name in an interview, I will release everything. And then I will dedicate my considerable resources to making sure you never work again. The threat hung in the air, heavy and absolute. And then a red Porsche pulled into the driveway. Brittany Mercer stepped out. Her heels clicked against the concrete as she surveyed the scene. The belongings on the lawn, the faces on the porch, the broken man in between. Grant, what is going on? You said everything was handled. You said her father could not touch you. Brittany, Grant said quickly, this is not a good time. Miss Mercer, Richard interrupted. How convenient. I was hoping we would have a chance to speak. Brittany's confident expression flickered. I do not have anything to say to you. That is fine, I have things to say to you. Richard descended the porch steps, slowly, deliberately. Do you know what the penalty for felony assault on a pregnant woman is in this state? Assault, Brittany laughed. Too high, too nervous. I do not know what you are talking about. I am talking about the video that shows you spitting in my daughter's face. I am talking about the police report that was filed this morning. I am talking about the criminal charges that are being processed as we speak. It was just a joke. Grant said it was fine. He said she was overreacting. Grant says a lot of things. I wonder if the judge will find them as convincing as you did. Brittany turned to Grant. Her face was twisted with sudden understanding. With the dawning realization that she had been used, that she was disposable, that everything Grant had promised her was as hollow as everything he had promised Caroline. Grant, tell them. Tell them it was your idea. Tell them you told me to do it. Brittany, shut up. You said it would help your case. You said you needed documentation of her being unstable. I said shut up! Grant's voice cracked. The mask shattered completely. What was underneath was ugly, desperate. The face of a man watching everything he had built collapse around him. Caroline had seen enough. She descended the stairs, walked onto the porch, stood where she could see her husband clearly for the first time. He looked like a stranger. Or no, he looked like himself. The real Grant Holbrook, the one he had hidden behind charm and money and endless manipulation. Sign the papers, Grant, she said. Her voice was steady, stronger than she expected. Sign them and walk away. It is more than you deserve. Grant looked at her. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been regret, or might have been just another calculation. Caroline, baby, please, we can work this out. I know I made mistakes, but I love you. I have always loved you. Everything I did was for us, for our family. Nuss, the word came out like a door closing. You do not get to say that. You do not get to stand there and pretend this was love. I know what love is now, and it is not this. It was never this. She turned to Ted Ashford. Give him the papers. Ted produced a thick stack of documents. Carolyn watched Grant flip through them, watched his face change as he realized how thoroughly he had been outmaneuvered. Full divorce, sole custody, return of all funds, and a gag order that would prevent him from ever speaking publicly about the marriage or the divorce. This is extortion, Grant said. This is consequence, Richard replied. Sign it now or face everything in court, and in the court of public opinion. Your choice, Saranson. Grant looked around one more time, at the wife he had betrayed, at the father-in-law he had underestimated, at the mistress who was finally seeing him clearly, at the future he had destroyed with his own hands. He signed, every page, every line, his signature getting more cramped and desperate with each document. When he was done, Ted collected the papers, checked every signature, nodded at Richard. We are finished here, Richard said. Gather your things from the lawn. You have 15 minutes. Then Vincent will escort you off the property. Grant said nothing, just began gathering his scattered belongings. Brittany stood frozen by her car, watching the man she had believed in reveal himself as a coward. Caroline went back inside. She did not need to watch anymore. The victory was hollow, satisfying in the moment, but empty underneath, because revenge was not healing. It was just a different kind of wound, but it was a start. The peace lasted exactly 6 days. On day 7, the tabloid article dropped like a bomb. Billionaire's daughter destroys innocent husband, shocking claims of abuse and manipulation. Jessica Crane's byline sat beneath the headline. The journalist Grant had been feeding information to for months. The article was exactly what Vincent had predicted. A character assassination dressed up as journalism. The story painted Caroline as unstable, jealous, paranoid. A woman so consumed by her own insecurities that she had invented an affair to explain her crumbling marriage. Unnamed sources described her erratic behavior, her frequent emotional breakdowns, her obsession with monitoring her husband's every move. Grant gave an interview. He cried on camera, actually cried, tears streaming down his handsome face as he described his heartbreak. I just want to see my, he sobbed. Carolyn will not let me near my own child. I have tried everything. I have begged, I have pleaded, but her family has turned her against me. They have poisoned her mind against the man who loves her. The performance was masterful. Grant's voice caught at exactly the right moments. His eyes glistened with perfectly timed tears. He looked like the victim. He sounded like the victim. And millions of people believed him. Carolyn watched the interview on her laptop, alone in her room at her parents' estate. She had moved there after the confrontation, unable to stay in the house where her marriage had existed. The comments section was brutal. Poor man, being destroyed by a rich family. She sounds completely unhinged. Classic gold digger behavior. Those webs think they can buy anything, including destroying an innocent man. He obviously loved her, and she threw it away. She scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. Each comment was a tiny knife. Each accusation was a wound that would not stop bleeding. She knew she should stop, knew it was poison, but she could not look away. Maybe they are right, the voice in her head whispered. The voice that sounded like Grant. The voice that had spent years telling her she was crazy and paranoid and not good enough. Maybe I am unstable. Maybe I made this worse than it needed to be. Maybe the spit was not that bad. Maybe I should have just accepted it. Maybe this is all my fault. The self-doubt was overwhelming. Years of gaslighting had worn grooves in her brain, pathways that led automatically to self-blame, to minimizing her own pain, to wondering if she was the real problem. At 3 a.m, she called Meredith. Tell me I am not insane. You are not insane. Meredith's voice was thick with sleep, but sharp with conviction. He is gaslighting you. He is gaslighting the whole country. But what if I lose? What if the courts believe him? What if they take my baby? That is not going to happen. Your father has resources Grant cannot even imagine. The truth is on your side. Is it? Because it does not feel like it. It feels like everyone hates me. It feels like I am the villain in my own story. The internet is not everyone. The people who know you know the truth. The people who love you know the truth. That is what matters. Carolyn pressed the phone against her ear. The connection was fragile, staticky, but it was something to hold on to. I am so tired, Mir. I am so tired of fighting something I did not start. I am so tired of defending myself against lies. I am so tired of being the villain. I know, honey, I know, but this is almost over. Your father is about to show the world who Grant really is. Just hold on a little longer. The next week was worse. More articles, more interviews. Grant's narrative spread like wildfire across social media. People who had never met either of them chose sides, made judgments, turned their marriage into entertainment. Carolyn could not leave the estate without photographers following her, could not go to doctor's appointments without strangers staring, could not exist without being watched, judged, dissected. She started to understand how small animals felt, hunted, cornered, nowhere to hide. Her doctor became concerned. The stress was affecting the pregnancy. Her blood pressure was elevated. The baby's heart rate showed signs of distress during monitoring. You need to rest, Dr. Patricia Owens said firmly. You need to stay off the internet. You need to stop letting this man live rent-free in your head. How? How do I do that when he is everywhere? When millions of people think I am a monster? You focus on what is real. On the baby inside you, on the people who love you, on the life you are going to build after all of this is over. Dr. Owens took her hand. He wants you to fall apart, Caroline. That is his goal. Proving you unstable is his last weapon. Do not give it to him. That night, Caroline sat in the darkness of her childhood bedroom, the room where she had dreamed about her future, the room where she had imagined a life full of love and happiness and children who would never know pain. The walls were covered with posters from her teenage years, movie stars she no longer remembered, bands she no longer listened to, reminders of who she used to be, before Grant, before the mansion and the marriage and the endless compromise of herself. She picked up her phone, opened the photo app, scrolled back through years of memories. There she was at her wedding, radiant, hopeful, so sure she had found her forever. There she was on her honeymoon, laughing on a beach in Bali, Grant's arm around her waist, his smile wide and seemingly genuine. There she was announcing her first pregnancy, the one that did not stick. Her face glowing with joy she would soon lose. And there, in photos she had almost forgotten, was the woman she had been before Grant. Confident, independent, full of plans and dreams that had nothing to do with being someone's wife. What happened to her? Where did she go? The answer came quietly, a whisper from somewhere deep inside. She did not go anywhere. She just went to sleep. And now it is time to wake up. The baby kicked, strong and insistent, a reminder that life was continuing, that the future was still being written, that this story was not over yet. Carolyn put down the phone, wiped her eyes, and made a decision. She would not let Grant Holbrook define her. Not anymore. Not ever again. The breaking was complete. But from the broken pieces, something new was beginning to form. Richard Webb called his press conference for a Thursday morning. The timing was deliberate. Maximum news cycle impact, maximum audience attention, maximum devastation for Grant Holbrook. The venue was the grand ballroom of the Webb Foundation headquarters. 300 journalists, 15 camera crews, representatives from every major news outlet in the country. Carolyn watched from a private viewing room upstairs. Her mother sat beside her, holding her hand. Meredith was on her other side. Dr. Owens had advised against attending in person. Too much stress, too much risk. But she needed to see it, needed to watch the moment the truth finally came out. Richard stood at the podium. He wore his best suit, the one he saved for board meetings and congressional testimonies. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the Webb Industries logo. Professional, corporate, absolutely terrifying. "Thank you all for coming," he began. His voice was calm, measured. The voice of a man who had won before the battle even started. "I am here today to correct a false narrative that has been spreading through the media, a narrative created by my former son-in-law, Grant Holbrook." The room went silent. 300 journalists leaned forward. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Holbrook gave an interview claiming to be the victim of a vindictive wife and her powerful family. He cried on camera. He begged for sympathy. He painted himself as an innocent man being destroyed by forces beyond his control. Richard paused, let the tension build. "Today, I'm going to show you what actually happened." The screen behind him flickered to life. Security footage, high definition, crystal clear, Grant's office, afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. Brittany Mercer perched on the desk, Caroline walking through the door with flowers in her hand. The room watched in absolute silence as the scene played out. The conversation, the insults, the gathering of saliva, the spit landing on Caroline's face, and Grant Holbrook laughing. The footage played 3 times. By the 3rd repetition, some journalists had turned away. Others were openly crying. The horror of what they were seeing was visceral, undeniable. "My daughter stood there 7 months pregnant," Richard said when the video ended, "with her husband's mistress's spit on her face, and her husband laughed." He let that sink in for a long moment. "But the assault you just witnessed is only a small part of Mr. Holbrook's crimes against my daughter. Today, I will present evidence of systematic emotional abuse, financial fraud, and a calculated plan to steal custody of his own child." The evidence came in waves. First, the financial documents, bank statements showing the theft of Caroline's trust fund, wire transfers to shell companies, the paper trail of $2.4 million disappearing into Grant's private accounts. Then, the custody documents. Grant's notes about proving Caroline mentally unfit, his meetings with family law attorneys, his plan to take the baby immediately after birth, then the other women. One by one, they came to the podium, each with their own folder of evidence, each with their own story of love bombing and manipulation and eventual discard. Victoria Patterson, the senator's daughter. She spoke with quiet dignity about the 2 years she had spent believing she was special. Margaret Chen, the marketing executive. She described the abortion Grant had pressured her into and the silence he had demanded afterward. Lisa Rodriguez, the graduate student, she explained how Grant had used his connections to help her career and what he had expected in return. And finally, to everyone's surprise, Brittany Mercer. She walked to the microphone in a simple black dress, no makeup, no defiance, just a woman who had finally seen the truth. "I loved him," she said. Her voice was hoarse, like she had been crying for days. "I loved him so much that I let him turn me into a weapon. He told me Caroline was evil, that she was keeping him trapped, that she had tricked him into marriage, and I believed him." Her voice cracked. "The day I spit on her, I thought I was defending him. I thought I was fighting for our future, but I was just another pawn, another disposable woman in his game." She turned to face a camera directly. "Caroline, I know you are watching. I am sorry. I am so sorry. What I did was unforgivable. I know that. But I want you to know that I see the truth now, and I will do everything I can to make sure he pays for what he has done to all of us." The questions came in a flood, reporters shouting over each other, cameras flashing. The story exploding across every platform in real time. By the end of the day, the tide had turned completely. Grant Holbrook's interview was recut and replayed. But now, instead of sympathy, the tears were evidence of manipulation. The pleas for understanding were signs of narcissism. The whole performance was exposed as exactly what it was: a con man trying to escape consequences. His business partners released statements distancing themselves. His investors demanded emergency meetings. His board of directors called for his resignation. The man who had stood in his office laughing while his mistress spit on his pregnant wife was now the most hated man in America. But the final blow came from somewhere no one expected. A letter arrived at the Webb estate the next morning, hand-delivered by courier, addressed to Caroline personally. She opened it in her father's study with her parents watching. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, the kind of penmanship they used to teach in finishing schools. "Dear Caroline, 8 months ago I sent an anonymous letter to your father. The letter that started the investigation into my son. I have watched Grant become something terrible. I have watched him hurt woman after woman. I have watched him lie and steal and manipulate without conscience. For years I told myself it was not my business, that he was an adult, that I could not control his choices. But when I saw how he was treating you, when I understood what he was planning to do to your child, I could no longer stay silent. I love my son. I will always love him. But love does not mean acceptance of evil, and what Grant has become is evil. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I should have stopped him years ago. I should have seen the signs when he was young. I should have raised a better man. But I can offer you this, the truth, and a promise that if you will allow it, I would like to be part of my grandchild's life. Not as Grant's mother, as your ally, as someone who will spend the rest of her days trying to undo some of the damage my family has caused. With deepest regret and sincerest hope, Diane Holbrook." Caroline read the letter 3 times. Grant's own mother, the woman who had raised him, who had defended him at dinner parties, who had always seemed to prefer him to any wife he might bring home. She had been the anonymous source. She had started the investigation that saved Caroline's life. "Did you know?" Caroline asked her father. Richard shook his head. "I suspected. When the letter first arrived, I wondered who would have access to such specific information. But I never confirmed it." "Why would she do this? Betray her own son?" Lorraine answered, her voice soft. "Because she saw what he was becoming, and she loved you more than she loved her denial." Caroline looked at the letter again, at the elegant handwriting, at the words of a woman who had chosen a daughter-in-law she barely knew over the son she had raised. Maybe not all the Holbrooks were monsters. Maybe there was hope after all. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday, exactly 3 months after the spit landed on Caroline's face. The courtroom was quiet, civilized, nothing like the media circus that had surrounded the past few weeks. Grant's attorney spoke in measured tones. Ted Ashford responded with equal professionalism. The judge reviewed the documents with the bored efficiency of someone who had seen 1,000 marriages end. Full custody to the mother, return of all funds from the trust. The house remains in Mrs. Holbrook's name. Mr. Holbrook will have no visitation rights until the child reaches the age of 3, at which point supervised visits may be arranged through the court. Grant sat at the defendant's table. He looked smaller than Caroline remembered, diminished, like the loss of his reputation had physically shrunk him. He did not look at her once during the proceedings, could not meet her eyes, could not face the woman he had tried so hard to destroy. When the gavel came down, Caroline felt nothing. She had expected relief, triumph, some kind of emotional release after months of warfare. But there was only emptiness, a hollow space where her marriage used to be. "It is over," Ted Ashford said as they walked out of the courthouse. "You won." "Did I?" Ted looked at her with something like understanding. "I know it does not feel like victory right now, but give it time. The wound is still fresh." 3 weeks later, Caroline went into labor. It happened at 2 in the morning. She woke to a sharp pain in her lower back. Then another. Then a gush of warmth that soaked through the sheets. "Mom," she called. "Mom, it is happening." The next hours were a blur of pain and fear and hope. Lorraine held one hand, Meredith held the other. Richard paced the hallway outside, wearing a groove in the hospital linoleum. "Push," Dr. Owen said. "One more push, Caroline. You are almost there." She pushed, with everything she had, with every ounce of strength that remained after months of fighting. And then, a cry, thin and reedy and absolutely beautiful. The most beautiful sound Caroline had ever heard. "A girl," Dr. Owen said, her face breaking into a smile. "Healthy and strong. You did it, Caroline." They placed the baby on her chest, this tiny, perfect creature, red-faced and squalling, absolutely furious at being evicted from her warm home. "Eleanor," Caroline whispered. "Your name is Eleanor, after your great-grandmother." The baby stopped crying, looked up with unfocused eyes, and Caroline fell in love. Not the love she had felt for Grant. That had been hope and desire and desperation dressed up as romance. This was something deeper, something primal, something that rewrote the very structure of her soul. This was her daughter, her blood, her future, and she would protect her with everything she had. Richard came in a few minutes later. He stood at the foot of the bed, staring at his granddaughter like she was made of starlight and miracles. "She is perfect," he said. His voice was thick. "Absolutely perfect." "She has your chin," Lorraine observed, "and her mother's eyes. And hopeful is none of her father's character." The joke fell flat, but that was okay. Some wounds needed time before they could become scars, and some scars never stopped hurting. The next few months were a blur of feedings and diapers and sleepless nights. Caroline moved into a new house, smaller than the one she had shared with Grant. A 3-bedroom cottage on a quiet street in a quiet neighborhood. White shutters, blue door, a garden she would plant in the spring. Her parents offered to buy her something grander, a mansion, a penthouse, anything she wanted. But Caroline said no. She needed something that was hers, something she had chosen, something that was not attached to any man or any family name. Just her and Eleanor, building a life together. Diane Holbrook visited for the first time when Eleanor was 6 weeks old. She came alone. No announcement, no fanfare, just an old woman standing on the doorstep with a stuffed rabbit in her hands. "I was not sure you would see me," Diane said. "I was not sure either." They sat in the living room. Eleanor slept in her bassinet between them. The elephant in the room was Grant, his absence, his crimes, his mother's betrayal of him. "How is he?" Caroline asked finally. "Not well." Diane's voice was flat, exhausted. "He lost everything, the company, the money, the friends who were only friends because of what he could do for them. He is living in a studio apartment now, working some sales job. I offered to help him, but he will not speak to me. Because of the letter. Because of the truth." Diane looked at her granddaughter. "He never should have been a father. I knew that even before you married him. But I hoped fatherhood would change him, would make him into the man I always wanted him to be. It would not have. No, it would not have." They sat in silence for a while. The clock ticked. Eleanor made small sleeping sounds. Outside, birds sang in the trees. "I do not forgive him," Caroline said finally. "I will never forgive him. I am not asking you to. But I understand what it cost you to send that letter, to choose me over your own son." Diane's eyes filled with tears. "He is still my son. I will always love him. But loving someone does not mean accepting their evil. Sometimes loving someone means stopping them before they can hurt anyone else. Can I ask you something? Anything. When did you know? When did you realize what he really was?" Diane was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was distant, remembering. He was 8 years old. We had a cat, a sweet little tabby named Marmalade. One day I found him in the backyard with the cat. He was pulling out its fur, slowly, deliberately. The cat was crying and trying to get away, and Grant was just smiling, like it was a game. Carolyn felt cold. What did you do? I told myself it was normal. Boys being boys, curiosity about animals. I made every excuse I could think of because the alternative was admitting that something was wrong with my child. Diane wiped her eyes. I have spent 30 years making excuses, 30 years watching him hurt people and telling myself it was not that bad. Not anymore. Eleanor stirred, made a small sound. Diane looked at her with something like hope. Can I hold her, just for a moment? Carolyn hesitated. This woman was Grant's mother, the woman who had raised the man who had tried to destroy her. But she was also the woman who had stopped him, who had chosen truth over loyalty, who was trying in her own way to make things right. Yes, Caroline said, you can hold her. Diane lifted Eleanor from the bassinet, cradled her with the practiced ease of a grandmother. Tears slipped down her weathered cheeks. Hello, little one, she whispered. I am your grandmother, and I promise you, I will never let anyone hurt you, not even my own son. 2 years later, Carolyn stood in her garden on a warm September afternoon. The roses were blooming, red and pink and yellow, the ones she had planted the first spring in her new house. They had grown tall and strong, spreading across the fence in a riot of color. Eleanor toddles through the grass nearby, 2 years old now, walking and talking and asking why, approximately 800 times a day. She had Caroline's eyes and Grant's chin and a personality that was entirely her own. Mama, look! Eleanor pointed at a butterfly, orange and black, a monarch. Pretty. Yes, baby, very pretty. Can I touch it? Better to just watch. Butterflies do not like to be touched. Because their wings are delicate. They need to stay perfect so they can fly. Why? Because flying is how they get where they need to go. Why? Carolyn laughed. The endless questions used to exhaust her. Now she found them charming, evidence of a curious mind, a mind that would always want to understand the world. Because that is just how butterflies work, sweetheart. Eleanor accepted them for now, but Caroline knew the questions would return. They always did. The doorbell rang. Meredith stood on the porch with a bottle of wine and a knowing smile. Happy anniversary, she said. Anniversary of what? 2 years since the divorce was finalized. I figured it deserved a celebration. They sat on the back porch while Eleanor played in the sandbox. The afternoon sun was warm. The wine was cold. The world felt peaceful in a way it had not felt for a very long time. Have you seen the news? Meredith asked. I try not to. Grant's company officially declared bankruptcy yesterday, Chapter 7. Complete liquidation. There is nothing left. Carolyn sipped her wine, watched her daughter build a sandcastle. She did not feel triumphant, did not feel vindicated, just tired and free. What about him personally? Living in the same studio, apartment, working the same sales job. His reputation is destroyed. No one will touch him. Meredith paused. He filed for visitation rights again last month. I know. Ted handled it. It was rejected again. Good. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only exists between old friends, between people who have seen each other at their worst and loved each other anyway. I saw Brittany last week, Meredith said. Caroline looked at her. Where? At a support group for domestic abuse survivors. She has been going for about a year now, working through what happened, what she did, what was done to her. Is she okay? Getting there, she asked about you, wanted to know if you were doing well. Carolyn thought about Brittany, the woman who had spit in her face, the woman who had been a weapon aimed at her by the man they both loved. Tell her I am fine, Caroline said finally. Tell her I hope she finds peace. You are not angry anymore? I am still angry, but not at her. She was a pawn, same as me. Grant was playing both of us. The only difference is I figured it out before she did. The afternoon stretched on. Eleanor abandoned the sandbox and demanded apple slices. then demanded a story, then demanded to be pushed on the swing. This was her life now. Small moments, simple joys, the endless, exhausting, beautiful work of raising a child. It was nothing like what she had imagined when she married Grant Holbrook. Nothing like the mansion and the parties and the perfect, wealthy life. It was better. That evening, after Eleanor was in bed and Meredith had gone home, Caroline sat in her living room and looked at the photos on the mantel. Eleanor on her first birthday, cake smeared across her face, laughing. Caroline and her parents at Christmas. The tree lit up behind them. Everyone smiling. Eleanor meeting Diane Holbrook for the first time. The older woman's face wet with tears. And one photo from a long time ago, Caroline at her college graduation. Before Grant, before the marriage, before everything. That woman in the photo looked different, younger, more hopeful, unaware of the pain that was coming, but also stronger, somehow. More herself, more certain of who she was and what she wanted. Caroline was becoming that woman again. Not the same, never the same, but similar. Rebuilt from the broken pieces into something new. The prison door had been unlocked all along, she thought. I was my own warden, serving a sentence Grant gave me, but I chose to accept. Walking out was never about finding the key. It was about admitting the door was always open. Her phone buzzed, a text from her father. Dinner Sunday? Yes, I will bring Eleanor. Good, your mother is making pot roast. Tell her I love her. Tell her yourself, I am not your messenger. Carolyn smiled, set down the phone, walked to Eleanor's room and stood in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep. Some nights she still checked her phone 3 times before bed. Lock, unlock, lock. But now it was just to see the baby monitor. Old habits becoming new ones. The 3 a.m. thoughts still came, but now they were about Eleanor's first words instead of everything she had done wrong. She kept one photo from her wedding, not of Grant, of her father, walking her down the aisle, tears in his eyes. That was the love that was real. That was the love that had saved her. We are going to be okay, Eleanor, she whispered to her sleeping daughter. We already are. And she was right. 5 years later, Caroline stood at a podium in front of 300 people. The Webb Foundation Annual Gala, the biggest charity event of the year. Raising money for the cause Caroline had made her life's work. 7 years ago, she said, I was a woman who had lost herself, lost in a marriage, lost in someone else's vision of who I should be, lost in the belief that my worth depended on a man who did not deserve me. The room was silent, listening, every eye fixed on her. I was abused, manipulated, gaslit into believing that my own perceptions were wrong, that my feelings were crazy, that I deserved the treatment I received. She paused, looked out at the faces, some sympathetic, some curious, some survivors themselves hearing their own stories reflected in her words. Today, the Webb Foundation supports over 2,000 women every year. Women leaving abusive relationships, women rebuilding their lives, women learning, as I had to learn, that their worth is not determined by anyone else. Eleanor sat in the front row, 7 years old now, bright and curious and absolutely fearless. She had asked to come tonight, had insisted on wearing her best dress, had told Caroline she wanted to see Mama be brave. I am not here to talk about my ex-husband. His story ended years ago, and it was never really interesting anyway. I am here to talk about the women who inspired this foundation, the women who refused to be defined by their worst moments, the women who rebuilt themselves from the ashes. She looked at her daughter, at her parents, at Meredith, who had never left her side, at Diane Holbrook, who attended every gala and donated generously to the cause. Recovery is not a destination. It is a journey. Some days are harder than others. Some scars never fully heal. But every day we choose to keep going, we prove something important. We prove that we are more than what happened to us. We are more than the people who hurt us. We are survivors. And survivors are the strongest people in the world. The applause began, slowly at first, then building, then thunderous. Caroline stepped down from the podium. Eleanor ran to her and threw her arms around her mother's waist. You were so good, Mama. Thank you, baby. Were you scared? A little, but I remembered something very important. What? Caroline knelt down, looked into her daughter's eyes, the same eyes she saw in the mirror every morning. I remembered that being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do the scary thing anyway. And I remembered that I am never alone. I have you, and Grandma and Grandpa, and everyone who loves us. Eleanor hugged her again, tight, fierce, the hug of a child who had never known fear, who had never seen her mother cry in a bathroom at 3 in the morning, who believed with all the certainty of childhood that everything would always be okay. And looking at her daughter, Carolyn believed it too. Not because the pain was gone, it would never be completely gone. The spit, the laugh, the years of lies, they were part of her now, part of her story, but they were not the whole story. The whole story included this moment, this room full of people, this daughter who would grow up knowing what real love looked like, this future that she had built from nothing but determination and the people who loved her. The whole story included healing. Some nights, Carolyn still dreamed about that day in Grant's office, still woke up with phantom spit on her cheek, still felt the echo of humiliation burning through her. But then she would look at her life, at her daughter, at the foundation that had helped thousands of women find their own strength. And she would remember that the best revenge is not destruction. The best revenge is building a beautiful life anyway. The scar was not gone. Some things leave marks, but marks can become maps, reminders of where you have been and why you will never go back. And Caroline Webb, the woman who had once been Caroline Holbrook, had no intention of ever going back. Only forward, only up, only free. And that is the story of Caroline Webb, a woman who walked through fire and came out stronger on the other side. If this story touched your heart, if you felt her pain and cheered for her victory, I would love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me what moment hit you the hardest. Was it the spit, the laugh, or was it when her father finally showed Grant Holbrook what true power looks like? And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone going through their own battle, share this with them. Sometimes knowing you are not alone is the first step toward finding your own strength. Hit that like button if you believe karma always finds its way. And if you are new here, welcome to the family. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story, because every week we bring you tales of betrayal, redemption, and the kind of justice that only life can deliver. Thank you for staying until the end. You are the reason I do this. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and remember, the best revenge is living well.